My guest today is Ann Marie Fleming, the writer and director of Can I Get a Witness? But before we start our conversation, can you tell our viewers just in a few words what the film is about?
Ah, well, Can I Get a Witness is about the future, and it's a thought experiment that imagines that we've solved all the world's problems. We've mitigated climate change, and we've uh, have true trans-species democracy. There's no more global poverty. Everything's really great. It's just that we have to make a couple of adjustments to make this happen. Um, so yeah, the film it asks the question, what are we willing to do for the greater good, for the planet, and for each other? And so hopefully the film helps to start a conversation about this world that we live in and share right now.
When I first read this description of the film, it absolutely resonated with me. And when I finally watched it, I loved it even more. So, what was the inspiration for this story?
Well, I live in Vancouver, BC, on the west coast of Canada. And we have this big park, Stanley Park. And way back in 2006, there was an enormous windstorm and 10,000 trees were blown over in one night while, the city was having a conversation about taking down a few trees to put in some lights to make it safer for women to walk through the park. Nobody could come to this decision, and suddenly we were wiped out. Like that was not even a discussion anymore. And also, also during that time, the conversation was about, our pension, right? That they wanted to raise the age of pension from 65 to 67. And I was nowhere close to that. It was, but I thought this is so funny. By the time, I'm reaching that stage, there's going to be nothing. There's going to be nothing for my generation and down. And so I took a nod from Jonathan Swift, who's this British-Irish novelist and satirist. Um, uh, who you might know from Gulliver's Travels, but he wrote a piece called A Modest Proposal. Uh, the Irish were suffering a lot with famine and crop failures, and he suggested that they eat their babies and that this would take care of, their population issue and also provide great protein. And people got very upset at him. I mean, it was a satire. But it started a conversation that changed laws and brought attention to these horrible absentee landowner practices that the Irish were enduring. So this started off as a satire because the idea of this came from so long ago, where the climate crisis was not the front page of however you ingest your media, your news. It wasn't touching everybody the way it was. We hadn't had COVID, right? So we haven't had lockdown. We hadn't had governments around the world all agreeing to, some would say, some pretty uh, drastic measures of control. Uh, we hadn't had MAID in Canada. We have medical assistance in dying now that's available. That wasn't even a conversation when I started this. So it was easier to see this as a satire at the beginning. But because our world has changed so much and it resembles so many conversations and experiences that we may have actually gone through, and certainly this conversation about what would we be willing to do for the greater good, and people had very different opinions on that. So I think that, and the whole idea about leaving the planet early because we're consuming too much, including time. So the tenor of the project has changed over its journey, and it's just become a lot, more about. I think, I mean, even though there's a lot of death, there's a lot of death. It's like, what is our relationship to to death? And what is our relationship to life and how precious it is?
The subject of dying or the end of life is handled differently all over the world. So in the Western world, people are not talking much about it, while in other cultures, it's part of everyday life. So did you notice that people reacting differently to your film depending on their culture?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I have not traveled. The film is really from a North American um, point of view, but also, I come from an Asian culture. I'm half Chinese. And there were people who were brought to the project, including Sandra Oh, including Prashant Miranda, who is South Asian, who did the drawings in the film, Kiah's drawings, because they were interested in the fact that the film talks so openly about death in such a, normal way. It's part of life. It's part of what you do. We're all here. We're all here. We all do a couple of things together, and one of them is die. And so yeah, just to talk openly about it. And what's so interesting, because I have not traveled with the film. Uh, I've only I've only traveled with the film in North America, and it's interesting because one of the reasons I can't be at your festival is because I'm going to be in Korea. And it's the first time that I'll see it in an Asian context, and I imagine it's going to be very different, very different. And the conversation is going to be more about climate because, yeah, the death thing, you know, we're all gonna die. So yeah, it's very interesting. But also, I've had a lot of people come up to me who deal with end of life, who work in hospice or palliative care, and they're actually very interested in this film because it's conversations that they have every day um, with, the people that are in their care.
The film was shot in Paul River, which is just a little bit north of Vancouver.
Mhm.
And you have a special connection to the place, right?
Yeah, well, many years ago, I was invited up as a guest to teach at this digital film school with teenagers and animation and film. So these people were 17, 18 years old. And I was so amazed by just the visual literacy that they had within them, by osmosis, that they weren't able to articulate yet. They didn't understand, but yet it was all there. And also, here you had these young people who were dealing with, very big issues that were not in their control, like whether it was family or financial or, climate. And here they were just trying to make their work. And Powell River used to be the site of the largest pulp mill in the world around World War One time. And it was working up until a few months before we shot. And but there had been a slow economic decline. It was very much a resource-based community. And so the demographic had changed, the economy was changing. It was just a slower place. And so with these kids, these young adults that I was working with, and with this environment and with my ideas, I thought, oh, the future could look a lot like Powell River. And so it's definitely a big character in the film.
So did the way things are in Powell River now inspire the story when you wrote it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There is production design. There is production design, but it's very much a version how a lot of people live up there. Yeah.
Yeah. What
Or
I
if anybody lives on an island, you just have to be um, more aware and more intentional with everything that you do. And we don't get that the world is this tiny grain island in the middle of a lot of uh, uh, nothing from our point of view, from a human's point of view, a lot of nothing.
The world that you've created has many beautiful aspects, like lesser to non-technology, a better connection to the nature around us, and many more. So some actors often create backstory to their characters to have a better understanding. So did you, as a writer and director, did something like that as well? Like some sort of manifest or so? Or, and if so, how detailed was it?
Oh, certainly there's a manifesto for this world. I was inspired by what was written in 1968 in Paris, that you had all these students, these 18-year-olds that were creating this manifesto that they demanded be signed as a template for, the world they wanted to live in. And so for me, this existed, it is written, and but here you have these people who did this when they were 18, and now it's time to go. And there's no one else who knows anything but that because they're all gone already, and so now they've got to walk this walk. It was really, and in fact, I was going to start the film with that, like kind of like a Star Wars scroll, and it was actually Sandra Oh, the actor who plays Ellie, who said no. She said, she said, absolutely not. We discover the world and we make the world. We don't give it away. Let people discover, let people work for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
like that. And what I also like is that you don't take sides. You just observe and let the audience decide whether having to end life at 50 is okay for the greater cause. Was that always the plan?
Yes. I mean, all my films are like that. I think a lot of my films deal with very tricky subjects. And my job, I think, is to make space just to bring this out and let other people decide. Because depending on your background, your point of view, what you bring to this film, you might see a very different film, very different. I've certainly uh, I, as a human being, as Anne Marie Fleming, I have my own views, but my 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 work as an artist, or what I try to bring to this film, is to just pose the question and leave space.
Yeah. If we look at the world today, where society is becoming more and more divided, and do you
Mm.
think we could ever come to such an agreement globally, or is it becoming more and more distant?
Um, I think that we make agreements every day. There's 8 billion of us, and of course we're looking at the divisions, the things that keep us apart, the things, the violence, the the uncaring, but that's not all that's happening. And in fact, it's not most of what is happening. Because we have to be in agreement for everything, for 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 people to raise children, for people to be in traffic, for there to be food that goes back and forth, for us to survive. There's so much that we do wrong, but there's so much that we also do right. And I think that humans are collaborative at our base. We're collaborative people, even if we don't like other human beings. We just are collaborative. It's our survival. It's our survival instinct. We are hardwired. And I guess what I'm trying to say in this film is that even though death, death, death is like, I'm saying, like that seems to be, please think that this is um a very, very harsh end of a spectrum. And there's so much that we can do in between. And, our lives, whether we live for 1 year or we live for 100 years, uh, everything that we do is incremental. And everything we do matters. There's 8 billion of us, and we are all doing a lot of the same things every day. We just do because we're biological creatures. But there's other things that we can do that we think they're small, but they are not small. And so I hope that the film is hopeful. I think it's hopeful. And I think that I'm a person that is very affected by by the news cycle, by what's going on. It's not like I don't feel hopelessness. And where's climate? Like, what happened to the discussion of the climate? It seemed like things were moving, and now things are moving back. And uh, I guess we just have to not give up on ourselves and our other human beings and our other, and the other creatures we share this planet with. Like we are secretly all in it together.
Absolutely. Um, you're also an animator, and it's only logic to have some animation in the film. So it reminded me a lot of the films of Michel Gondry,
Oh,
because you use that technique to show us what the characters are feeling right now. And
yeah.
it's very subtle, though. But so,
Yeah.
how did you find just the right amount of animation?
Oh, well, thank you for saying it's the right amount.
It is.
And also for comparing it to Michel Gondry's work, which is brilliant. And yes, absolutely, it's to show what can't be shown. But also, uh, originally there was going to be a lot more animation in this film because it's a world where you have to repress feelings to be able to do what you got to do. But the when we shot it, I mean, it was just so tender. There was so much tenderness and feeling there, and it just seemed that I still wanted to make the case for animation, for things that Kiah can't express. Also, in terms of story, that there's no more photography, but also you know, uh, the importance of art, like art in our world and in our imagination and what we show to each other, what we are able to show to each other. Because in the end, when we're gone, there is our art, you know? So yes, I dial down the animation a lot. And also it's like it's got a little leitmotif there, like you see these little schmoodles and you go, oh, oh, uh-oh. It's like something's happening. Um, yeah. Yeah, and also to show that um there's another there's another story, there's another layer to our existence besides the one that, we think we're all looking at.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The sound design is also something that's very special in your film. It's very reduced, I would say, and more focused on the sounds of nature.
Mhm.
Like, for example, there's a beautiful scene with Sandra Oh just standing in a field, and all we can hear is her breathing.
I know.
Can you shine a little light on how you created that sound design?
Yeah, isn't that I love that. I love that scene. I love that scene where it was actually an 18-minute shot. She said, I can only do this once. It was 18 minutes, and I don't think anybody breathed the whole time. It was amazing. But yes, nature is also a character. So I didn't want to score. I didn't want to show you how to be feeling, but I did want you to feel, and I wanted to put you in that space. And so nothing does that like sound. Is that if this was smell-o-vision, I would have had if you could smell the place. But I think nothing puts you in a place like sound. And like that scene with the tea ceremony with the couple, right? Where the trees are just there. They're like actors in the piece, and you hear it. And I don't know what it's like because I live in this place, and I'm surrounded by trees, and I'm surrounded by nature all the time. What it is for people who live in a very urban environment, who don't have that opportunity of space, you know? And I also wanted, the pace I realize is very slow. And it's purposefully slow because I want people to slow down, and every scene, like nobody wants to leave. Nobody wants to leave this world because it is so beautiful. Our world is so beautiful. And to see Ellie standing in that field in in a theater, in a full theater, it happens sometimes. But it's it's really something because everybody's just listening. They're just listening, and it's so beautiful. It's, it's such a beautiful experience.
Yeah. There's one scene that also really grabbed me. It's during a discussion when someone says, I've still seen the old world. That reminded me that people really tend to forget things the more time has passed. And we can see that in the rise of the far right all over the world right now. So, did you have that in mind when you wrote that part of the script?
Well, it is incredible how little memory we seem to have, and I think that our world is designed, it's not just our media and our devices and our short attention spans and all of that. We've always been like this. We are always repeating things that we thought were unrepeatable. And we need to keep telling ourselves the stories again and again and again. And I think, the oral tradition and films are in the oral tradition, how essential that is, and I think one of the greatest, I don't want to say losses, and maybe it's just Western civilization, or maybe it's just North American civilization, is that we are more and more isolated, not just in our own little, political silos, but also in our generational silos. And that we do not, we are always rediscovering the wheel. The wheel's getting much fancier, but it's still a wheel. And we just, I think the generations need to be more together, be more together. And it's such a loss to lose. And that's it. That's the loss of a person is a loss of a history. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the cast. Sandra Oh is
Okay.
wonderful as always, and you've worked with her before on your film Window Horses. But Kira Young is just incredibly good. As far as I know, she's only done two short films, one episode of The Killing and another one of Batwoman. So how did you find her?
Well, yeah, I mean, her reel didn't really show much because she didn't have much of one. But I did an open casting call, I did an open call, just people sent me their little videos, and there was just something about her. I mean, everybody was fantastic. I can't believe the depth of talent there is, for young women. And I was looking for somebody who was um, part Asian, very specific. I wanted somebody who was part Asian. And but she just stood out to me. There was just something about her. And so I came back to her because she had so little experience, but I just felt that she really imbued how I saw Kiah, and she was fantastic. It was so amazing to work with her. Uh, yeah, it was it was delightful, and she brought it every day. I was really, I was thinking, well, here's a very inexperienced actor. How are they going to be acting with Sandra? Because Sandra is, I mean, she's not just a consummate actor, I think, at the top of her game, but she's also an icon to young female Asian actors, I don't think it's hard you can't overestimate the effect that she's had on people's lives and the door she's opened. And so I was really worried whether there would be any, kind of um uh well, you know what I mean. So just sort of like but there wasn't. It was always just actors working with actors. And yeah, it was like it was a dream.
Yeah. I could feel that in the movie. So I believe that being on a budget and having a limited number of shooting days is mostly good for a film because at some points you have to get creatively challenged. But just hypothetically speaking, would you have done anything different if you had, let's say, endless time, endless money, or would we
Oh,
still shoot
sure.
the same film?
Oh, sure. Okay. So so where can I start? It was very, very short, and I don't think a very short shooting schedule, But we had B camera because, the place is filthy with animals, and I wanted nature to be such a big part of this film. And I think it is, but the place is filthy with deer. Every time we turned on a camera, no deer. Where the bear? Where are the squirrels? Every animal you see in that film is CGI. We had to we had to create all of the animals, which I was not expecting. I was not expecting that at all. And also the foxgloves, there had been well, actually everything was so funny because it was a very different palette. About a month, I went up, we scouted, we, prepared, and when we went up, it was after a heat wave for 2 weeks, and everything was parched. Everything was different. It was very interesting. Um, I'm not greedy, but I could have used a little more time. But you know what? Just for the slings and slays of, economics, the film is actually quite a bit longer, but I had to, cut it for distribution reasons.
So maybe we'll see some director's cut at some point.
That would be amazing.
I think the film is perfect the way it is, so I wouldn't change a thing. So
Oh, wow. That is very kind of you. Thank you.
you're welcome. Um, let's wrap up our little talk with a quick look into the future. What's next for you? Is there anything you can already talk about?
Well, I have another project that I've been working on forever. In fact, I did a documentary, an animated documentary called The Magical Life of Long Tak Sam. I finished that in 2003 and also did a graphic novel. And it's based on my family, my great-grandfather, Long Tak Sam, who was a traveling Chinese vaudevillian acrobat and magician, and who traveled all over the world, married an Austrian woman in 1908. She had two mixed-race daughters who were in his act, and then later on a son who was not. And so what I've done is I'm making an animated feature, takes place in 1932 in Vancouver. Now, it's interesting because they were traveling all around the world all the time. But in 1932, things are changing. I mean, I started this in 2004, where I thought the world was like this then, but now it is very like this now, right? So you've got this burgeoning of technology. Film is taking over vaudeville. You've got the arts are going crazy with experimentation. But you've got the rise of fascism, you've got borders closing down, you've got xenophobia, you've got the Great Depression, you so many things that just like now. And so this film is going to center on the girls, on the sisters, and what is it like? But again, it's a film. Well, so okay, I'm going to tell you. So in 1932, in real life, they're invited to this whites only event at Christmas called the Snowball as performers. In the film, they're invited, but there's a misunderstanding and they think they are guests. They are not. And so I've been wanting to explore this world forever. And again, it's about the incredible power of art and its ability to create the world. If we can imagine it, we we can live in it. The art helps us create the world that we want to be in.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I can't wait to see it at some point. So, thank you very much for the interview. It was a pleasure having you here, and good luck with the film. And
Thank you.
I hope it's going to find a German distributor because it's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for your questions and your care.
You're welcome.